G'day everybody, my name is Lowell and welcome to the channel. So we're continuing our discovery of college football. Somebody sent me this link for Big Ten college football stadiums. So I know a lot of people have been saying comments in the comment section of videos saying about the capacity of stadiums, etc., etc. So I thought we'd check this one out. So let's jump in. Let's do Big Ten college football stadiums. Let's go.
Up until now, I had been going through the FBS conferences in a complete...
Is that in Australia? Okay, somebody's speaking my language, literally speaking my language. Okay.
random order. But
Excellent.
due to overwhelming demand, I've had to make the executive decision that allows the Big Ten to jump the queue.
Okay.
Actually, I don't think you say queue in America, so to cut the line, I guess. Combined, the Big Ten stadiums have a capacity of around 1 million. But that doesn't mean that the average capacity is 100,000. No, because there are, of course, 14 teams, as you'd expect with a name like Big Ten. Anyway, here are the Big Ten college football stadiums. Beaver Stadium, home of the Penn State Nittany Lions. The stadium is named after James, a beaver who built the stadium.
James A. Beaver. It's James. Yeah, okay. I see what you've done there. Okay. That's what Penn State's called? Okay.
Beavers build dams, but in this area of Pennsylvania, they're a little more sophisticated. That might not actually be true.
It's got that dry Australian comedic wit. Okay. That is a big stadium. Holy, look at the car park.
The thing I love most about this stadium is that the expansions that have occurred over the years are very conspicuous. You can basically see how every section has been expanded.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And you've got a bit of everything sprinkled in. I particularly like the design of each end zone. In the north, you have this big curved upper deck that hovers above the lower bowl, which is a fairly uncommon design. And the south end zone seating is similar to that of LSU's Tiger Stadium. It looks great. The stadium is set for a major renovation that will bring it into the 21st century.
Oh.
Because although it looks good on the outside, there are some aspects where it's lacking on the inside.
Okay.
Camp Randall Stadium.
So 106,000. That's a lot of people. Penn State. Okay. Now there is one. I will look at Penn State a little bit closer too because of the what do they call that? Whiteout? I think that's what they call it. We're going to have a look at that a little bit later as well too.
Home of the Wisconsin Badgers. It's the oldest stadium in the Big Ten. In fact, it's named after the Union Army training camp that occupied the site during the Civil War.
Oh.
I'm not usually a big fan of wars, but at least they kept it civil. This one...
Oh my God. Come on, man. Do we really need that kind of humor?
One is another stadium that has a lot going on. Well, most of the capacity comes from the main...
It kind of... The end of it with this building here, it looks very Roman. It looks very Roman. Okay.
Seating bowl once again, which is fairly plain and simple. But then you have this sizable upper deck on the western side that curves its way around, matched with the skybox equivalent on the east. Wow. The exterior is also completely different on each side of the stadium. And it's not something I usually mention, but they have a very fancy looking field house as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Car park is much smaller than Penn State. Well, I mean, it is what, almost 30,000 or less people, but much smaller. Okay.
Maryland Stadium, home of the Maryland Terrapins. If, like me, you were wondering what a terrapin is, it's a turtle. They chose that name, of course, because turtles are known for their speed, strength, and agility.
I'm not even gonna say anything, man. If you're from Maryland, I do apologize. Okay.
No, but turtles are cool. This one is a lot simpler than the last two. It's a fairly typical horseshoe design with the addition of very tall triple-decker seating on one of the sides.
Oh yeah.
And on the other side, they've got this combination of outdoor seating and luxury suites. It looks pretty cool, actually. I often...
Very open compared to the last couple that we've seen. Very, very open. Now, there's more than 14 teams, isn't there? Does he mean the top 14? See, that's where it starts to get confusing in my mind. It's like, how many teams? What are we talking about? It must be the top tier. Let me know. I know there is another video I'm going to do as well, which has the 3 divisions, I think it is. But we'll get to that at another stage. So, okay.
Note how some stadiums have an exterior that's reminiscent of a parking garage. But this one literally has a parking garage as the exterior behind the west end zone, which is very convenient. Kinnick Stadium,
Iowa.
home of the Iowa Hawkeyes.
69.
It's named after Niall Kinnick. I believe it's the only college stadium named after a Heisman Trophy winner, which is very surprising. And yet they've got one that's named after a beaver called James. This sort of design is somewhat uncommon in college football, given that it's made up of 4 individual stands that aren't connected.
Oh.
But
okay.
those stands do have quite a traditional look to them, with a red brick facade for the most part. But what the stadium is most well known for can't be seen from the outside.
Is this the one with the children's hospital?
Visitors' locker room is completely pink, which is done to put the away team in a passive mood. I mean, how fired up can you get when you're surrounded by pink? It also has been known to increase their concern for having their nails broken. It even extends to the bathroom, which might not be in the spirit of sportsmanship, but it is kind of funny. I wonder what would be crossing the line. Could you constantly have K-pop music playing in the rooms? That's like the audio equivalent of the color pink. Well, to be honest, I don't even know what it sounds like, but just look at them.
Yes, that is. I'm sure it's Iowa that. Let me know. Man, we just did that in the video. I cannot remember. That waved to the children's hospital. I'm pretty sure that's
Memorial Stadium, home of the Illinois Fighting Illini. This one's a little different.
What the hell
It has a very elegant neoclassical design, particularly the exterior.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like something you'd see in the Ivy League. In fact, it kind of looks like a combination of Harvard Stadium and Franklin Field.
Oh my God, they look like I've never seen the outside of that. Looks like the Coliseum. Actually, the Coliseum.
Something that's quite fascinating about this stadium is that during construction, way back in the 20s, heavy rain caused one of the bulldozers to sink into the field. They decided that it wasn't feasible to remove it, so it remains there to this day.
Wait, is that right? Is that true? Let me know. So many jokes this guy's got. Who knows what he's bloody telling the truth? What the heck? Illini? Is that what it's called? Fighting Illini? That doesn't sound right.
Yes, it's tragic, but at least the bulldozer driver was able to memorize the owner's manual in English, French, and Spanish before he died from asphyxiation. He's a quick learner, although he did have a bit of trouble with the Japanese section.
It almost looks fake because it's so pristine, the field and everything. Man, that's an impressive field.
I am of course joking, nobody was buried alive with the bulldozer, but I do really like this stadium. Memorial Stadium, home of the Indiana Hoosiers. First impressions are that this stadium isn't anything out of the ordinary. And then you look behind each of the end zones. To the south, there's a miniature version of the field. And to the north, you notice a spectacular cathedral or castle-like building.
Yeah, what's that?
Stunning. Although, as with many college stadiums, the southern end zone was recently expanded. So now it looks like this. Sadly, the little baby field was crushed. Yes, it's tragic, but it was able to memorize what concrete smells like before it died from asphyxiation. The interesting thing about this stadium is that those huge stands to the east and particularly to the west, they've been here since the stadium was built. Except there was literally nothing else. It was just grass behind each end zone.
Wow, that has definitely changed. Wow.
Kinda like that.
Okay.
Memorial Stadium, home of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. For being just humble Cornhusker folk, they've done quite well for themselves. They've built themselves a magnificent stadium with grand facades on each side. Very impressive. On the inside, it looks just as good. And the eastern stand technically has 5 tiers of seating, which you certainly don't see every day.
Talk about the nosebleed. Wow, that's pretty high.
Behind each end zone, you have these huge stands, which look pretty cool. And I suppose I should mention that on game day, the stadium itself becomes the 3rd biggest city in the great state of Nebraska.
Now, a couple of people did say that that happens. That's crazy. That is crazy, isn't it? I mean, it just looks amazing. And I keep harping on it's college. I still trying to get that fact, in my brain and wrap around and whatever else. We have nothing like this here. It's crazy. It is.
Although
crazy.
it's not a city, it's a stadium within a city. Nebraska doesn't have many sizable cities, I think, is the main point. Because as the legendary Nebraskan poet Douglas McNugget once said, "You can't grow corn in a concrete jungle." So true.
Okay.
Michigan Stadium.
107. Now this is where we saw them doing Mr. Brightside. Okay, it's kind of okay. It's not very tall. The stadium.
Greens. Let me start out by mentioning that it's the 3rd biggest stadium in the world and the biggest outside of Asia. So that's fairly impressive in itself. But the stadium's sunken design means that from the outside, you'd hardly notice that the stadium was anywhere near that size.
It really does look like a sunken bowl, doesn't it? Okay.
The design, although it looks pretty good, is very, very simple. It's just a single-tiered bowl with skyboxes on either side of it.
I mean, if it works, it works. You get 107,000. And to see everybody in there, it's fantastic sight.
Field. In fact, the most unusual thing about it is that it's almost perfectly symmetrical, an anomaly in college football.
Yeah,
the stadium holds numerous attendance records, as you might expect, including the largest college football crowd that wasn't held in a NASCAR track, which was a little over 115,000.
Wow. 115,000. Jesus. That's crazy.
Ohio Stadium, home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. You see, I know that a sunken field design is more cost effective, and I guess it would be safer if an earthquake were to occur. But you've just got to love an imposing exterior like that.
Yeah.
Just look at it.
I mean, I like that sunken bowl. That's unique in itself. But when you drive up to it and you see this thing, towering above you, that's a different feel as well.
Yes, it's a fortress. I'm surprised there isn't a drawbridge. That would be pretty cool. Actually, this little section was inspired by the Pantheon in Rome.
Oh, yeah.
But the entire stadium itself was clearly inspired by something less opulent, that being the shoe of a horse.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does look like one. Well, we did say there was a horseshoe design. Okay. Again, the field looks, perfect shape. Damn.
In fact, before the southern end was filled in, it was the king of all horseshoes. Now, it technically isn't a horseshoe stadium, even if it is its nickname. But one thing that isn't in doubt is that it's a very impressive stadium. I really do like it.
It is a fortress, look at it.
Ross-Ade Stadium, home of the Purdue Boilermakers.
Okay.
That is a very specific nickname, but I like it. You've got to be tough to make a boiler.
Okay.
Well, perhaps not these days. The stadium...
Is it off-season? Because the field looks completely different to the other ones. Maybe it is. Maybe they're resurfacing it or whatever they do with fields.
As you can see, is that rudimentary single-tier horseshoe style that you see here and there. It's probably the simplest stadium in this conference, but for some people, that's ideal. But the stadium's south end zone is a little unusual. This section used to have bleachers, but I guess it's just this guy's private parking space now.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Ryan Field, home of the Northwestern
47.
Wildcats.
Okay.
Now, this one's got a bit more going on. It's another one with a fortress-like grand entrance, with two big white towers that can be seen from inside the stadium. It's the smallest Big Ten stadium in terms of seating capacity, and some of that seating is a little strange. The main stand's upper deck curves both from the bird's eye view and the side-on view, which is quite uncommon. And what's with this section? It seems like they should have just continued with the curve. Dunno.
That's a weird angle. Like it should be kind of twisted a little bit. That's a weird angle for that end. I wonder how... I don't know. If you've ever sat there, let me know what the viewing point's like. It kind of looks like it's kind of off.
But I'm sure there's a reason. It's definitely a unique stadium. You've got to give it that.
Wildcats.
Sheer Stadium. Home of the Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
52,000.
There's no obvious medieval-inspired architecture with this one. It's all fairly normal on the outside. But it does have a cannon, however. So that's good. It's fired when the Scarlet Knights score, but I presume it also comes in handy when a drunken spectator runs onto the field. That actually sounds like fun. Something else that's a little unique is the red tin roof section that wraps its way around the north end zone seating. As well as this little section of the south end zone that's actually the recruiting lounge. Other than that, it's a fairly straightforward...
Recruiting lounge for what? For the football? Rutgers. I'm sure I've heard of Rutgers before. Probably for some movie.
But a good one.
I know.
Spartan Stadium, home of the Michigan State Spartans.
75.
This stadium has a very clean design. It would even be perfectly symmetrical, just like the other stadium in Michigan, if it wasn't for this built-up side over on the west that was added in 2005. I like it. It's modern, yet traditional. And it's the only side of the stadium with a particularly good-looking exterior. The rest is a bit meh. It may come as a bit of a shock, but due to this section, the stadium is actually the tallest building in the city. Provided you exclude those smokestacks over there. And to be fair, the city has a smaller population than the stadium's capacity. So, it's not much of a...
Wait, what? How does that work out? Okay.
brag. And finally, TCF Bank Stadium, home of the Minnesota Gophers. It's the newest stadium in the conference, although you might not be able to tell just by looking at it. They have tried to stick with a traditional college football aesthetic. Kind of. I mean, there weren't really any designs quite like this in the 1920s. But the exterior is still fairly classical looking with the extensive use of brick and whatnot. I like the look of that one, actually. You also get a decent view of the Minneapolis skyline from some vantage points, which is always good. The stadium is designed to be able to seamlessly expand in the future if need be, and you can just tell by looking at it where the additional seating might be added. It's a great stadium to end with. And that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.
Some of those stadiums are huge. But again, obviously it comes down to the Big Ten. I'm assuming that's the actual football teams, not the stadiums, because I know there's a few more stadiums bigger than those ones. So obviously Michigan is the biggest one. So third largest in the world. That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I know I keep harping on, and everybody keeps harping on it as well, college and whatever. But just to kind of get my brain around that, there's that, step behind what you call the professionals. But it's probably bigger than the NFL. I know people keep saying that, we like our college football better than the NFL. And I could probably see why as well too. So, especially if you ever go to any of these colleges as well, you're going to have that loyalty to that college. So, man, that was very interesting. Some of the jokes a little weird, but I mean, he's Australian. What can you expect? But good information and that good aerial footage of some of those stadiums as well. It's amazing how you can take something like a stadium where in theory, they're all the same. You know, sit people so you can see the game that's going on, but they always have their little, you know, their little quirks and their little charms, and you know, even just the way that they shape the actual stadium as well changes slightly as well. Man, that was very interesting. Very interesting. So obviously there's a lot more stadiums to see than that. As I said, we do have some more videos coming in with the divisions explained, which I don't understand at the moment, but I'm sure we'll get to the end of that as well too. So, and I do have other videos coming out as well. If you have suggestions for my college football discovery journey, let me know down in the comment section there. I'd definitely love to have a look at them. So let me know if you enjoyed this one, guys. Thank you very much for joining us today. Make sure you stay safe, and I will definitely see you in the next reaction video. Did you enjoy that video? Why not watch another one?